This is how we set up and paint for our origami color wheel. We based it off of the work of Sarah Morris and how she would take origami, unfold it, and then create a painting based on that. So this one I believe is a dog. For our setup, we're going to need to put down a large piece of paper as a placemat. That'll keep our area clean. You'll need half a bucket of water, 2 brushes, one sort of medium in thickness and another one that's kind of thin. We're also going to have sets of colors out at the tables. You're going to have your primary colors plus black and white. So hopefully we've already set up our canvas. We used carbon paper to transfer over our lines, and some people even went over this with a thicker permanent marker so that the lines really pop out. The nice thing about Sarah Morris's work is that you'll notice she used bright colored lines in between. So as we paint, if we can't get perfect edges, paint pens will help us kind of clean up those edges with a nice bright color, which will definitely enhance the project. So one of the things that we did was we photographed our origami paper and printed it in black and white so that we could see the idea of shading. This is not something that everyone is going to need in my class, but we have this as backup in case you finish a little early. You can push yourself so that you can exceed expectations and get an even higher grade on this particular project. What I do have you do is you looked at the fold patterns in black and white, and first you label all of the ones that are the lightest, that almost look like white. So I put an L on all of those. And then the next one is look at the darkest ones, maybe about 1/3 of them are really dark, and put a D on those. And then everything else is an M for medium. Later on, we'll be able to do tints and shades to kind of pull out the lights and darks. But we're gonna set this to the side for now, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. The other thing we're going to need to mix our colors is just a plain piece of copy paper, folded in half, and this can be easily thrown away. Instead of using palettes, we're gonna be using this, but you could use a paint palette for sure. And my paints have popsicle sticks in them. This makes it easy to distribute the paint. So you just push the stick through, you can scoop out some paint, put it onto your copy paper, and then we keep our paints nice and clean. If blue accidentally gets into the red, then it's no longer red, it's going to be more of a purple color. Do the same here with a little bit of blue. And we'll go for a little bit of red and our yellow. So we got red, blue, and yellow. The last color you're going to need is going to be your own choice. You're going to either use black or white as your 4th corner. So we can do red, blue, and yellow, and then we need something else. So I'm just going to choose arbitrarily white, but I could have chosen black. That would be fine as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. Great. And by keeping these capped, our paint doesn't dehydrate and get all dried up. So now you've got to kind of pick. If you have a lot of spaces, then I'm going to encourage you to repeat colors nearby, as long as they don't touch next to each other. And if you have larger spaces, then you don't need to repeat too much. Now, I would encourage you to use a small brush to do your edges, and then a larger brush to kind of fill in. So I'm just going to arbitrarily pick red or magenta, but it's our red, and I'm going to color in this space, and I do the edges first, and you notice that I'm kind of dragging the brush behind the paint. I'm not using it like a broom and squishing straight down. I'm just applying the paint to the surface, and I'm going up to the line, but trying not to cross over the line. It's okay if you cross over a little bit, but try and stay inside the lines as best you can. Now, these are student grade acrylic paints, and it's quite possible that you may need more than one coat to get a saturated color. But for this particular project, we're not real worried about that. We want to get our color on there as neatly as possible and fill it in, and take your time so that your work is as neat as you can. So fill this one in. Now, because this particular quarter of the origami has lots of little shapes, I can start to repeat this red, and I'm going to repeat it down here. And when I repeat a color, you want to think of the center as kind of the center of a wheel, and our colors in our color wheel are going to go around in that direction. So I don't want to put red over here because we're going to be moving to another color, but I can certainly put red up and down above each other. So I'm going to go ahead and put it here. Now, if I had less spaces like over here, then maybe I would only need to put in one, but here I actually have quite a few spaces. So to save myself some headaches and get through this project a little quicker, I'm going to go ahead and fill in that one. And then I have one more tiny one down here, and it's going to be hard to get these little corners, but that's going to be fine. Now I'm going to go to another one, and I have to wash my brush. So wash it in your water, test it on the paper, and you can see it's slightly pink, so I need to wash it a little bit more, because if I got some of that pink into the next color, it's going to affect it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the next one yellow, and I'm going to speed the video up for you so you can see me paint this in, but I'm going to paint the edges with the small brush, and then I'm going to fill in with the large brush. And you notice I'm doing red in this corner, yellow here, I'll do blue in here, and I'm going to do my white up here, and I'm just going to do my solid boxes. Now, because this has a lot, I'm going to be doing a few blues down here. This is so big and open, I'm just going to do one yellow and I'm going to do one white. And you can watch me as I speed this video up for this part. All right, now that I've finished my primary colors, you can see I made a little mistake down here. Some yellow went outside of the boundary. And if you catch it while it's still wet, you can use a little paper towel and pull that color off. And later on, we're going to be painting back over some of these spaces, so it's not going to be that much of a problem. So don't freak out. But the quicker you get it with a little paper towel and water, the faster it'll clean up. So now we're going to turn it into our color wheel project. So as I move like from yellow to blue, I'm going to do mixtures of yellow and blue in between here. And this side will be mostly yellow, and this side will be mostly blue. And when I move from yellow to red, I'm going to have mostly yellow on this side with a little bit of red, mostly red with a little bit of yellow. And each square, or each shape, we don't want to have the same color right next to each other. That's why I've spaced these out a bit. But with the bigger spaces, that's less of an issue. So let's say I want to move from the yellow to the blue. So I could go ahead and take my brush and grab just a tiny little bit of blue. You know, there's barely any on the brush. And I'm going to go ahead and mix that in with my yellow. So we've added a little bit of blue to this, and now it's kind of a slightly yellowy green. And now I can do that on this side. I wouldn't put it on this side because we want to go towards the blue. So I would go ahead and, same as I did before, paint the edges with this, and then I would go ahead and use the larger brush to fill in. right, and now if I want to continue moving in that direction, I can go ahead and add a little bit more blue into this. And then maybe I'm going to use that here. And you see I repeated this color here because they're not touching side by side. And I have a lot of spaces here, so I'm going to start doubling up some of my colors. Now I would continue this way until it's almost all blue and very little yellow. But I can also take some of this yellowy color and add it into my blue. And then I can start to use this color maybe in the spaces here. So it's mostly blue with just a little bit of yellow in it. And I don't know if the camera can pick up the difference, but it is a different kind of color. And it's moving in the direction of this. And again, because I have so many spaces, I'm going to go ahead and repeat it. And then I can certainly add some more, yellow to this. I think I'm going to do that. Let me bring this over, mix that in here. And then we will do the same thing between yellow and red. These will be several shades of orange. Then between red and white, we'll get different shades of pink, or tints of red which become pink. And same thing, we'll get different tints of blue, which then become like a light blue, powder blue sort of color. And we'll continue until this is full. Now, if you finish early, I'm going to give you a little heads up as to where we're going to go with these tints and shades. We can take a look at this diagram. Let me turn it so it's facing the same way. Right. And we can see that this space is this space, and I labeled it with a D for dark. So what we would do is I would get some more of my copy paper, fold it in half, and because it has a D on it, I'm going to be adding black to it. But I need to water down the black because instead of painting in black, we're going to do what's called glazing. So glazing means to use a very thin amount of color with a lot of water. So I'm going to put down the water here and I mix in that. So it's really kind of a gray because I don't want to cover over my work. I just want to add to it. And I'm going to glaze this with a little bit of the black. And that makes a shade of red. Right? And we'll let that dry. And if I have an area where it's supposed to be light, if I look over here, maybe this blue is supposed to be a light blue. I would go ahead and do the same thing with white. I would add in some water. More water. And then I could glaze this with a little bit of white. Now if it's too much, I could just clean off my brush and then just use some water to move it around, and then it glazes it lightly. So a glaze is just a little bit of paint with water. And now that's a lighter shade. So we got my lights over here. That happens after the color wheel is done and only if you have time. So primarily, we've got to get the color wheel done. And then if you have time, you can push yourself to exceed expectations by playing around with glazes of dark and light. If you have any questions, this is the time for you to raise your hand and ask your teacher. But this way we'll have a color wheel that is going to be a little bit more interesting based on the work of Sarah Morris. And at the very end, after the glazing, after everything, you can use a paint pen or a fine brush and re-outline the shapes, and then they will really pop. If you found this helpful, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit that like button. We really appreciate it. Thanks and have a great day.